This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. Fear. Oh, right. My God, we all have our fears, right? And when you Google the definition, and I Googled it for this episode, which is totally Lyndsay, right? An unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. I don't know about you, but that just kind of grosses me out that it's considered to be an unpleasant emotion, right? So do we even really know what fear is then? Because I don't find fear to be an unpleasant emotion. I find it fucking scary as shit, right? And I have massive safety issues, which anybody that has listened to the show and ad infinitum, I talk about safety. It comes from childhood trauma. It comes from high school trauma, from college trauma, from adulthood trauma. It comes from so much trauma, right? And that fear that lives within me, I feel that part of my pain issues are because of that fear, that unsafe, that feeling that something else is, what other ball is going to drop? What else could happen to me? That is so scary all the time, especially when you live in pain, right? I fear that I will lose loved ones because they can't handle my CRPS. They can't handle how I define my pain, I live in fear that they'll abandon me. I'll be left in, Las Vegas in the desert for dead because of my CRPS, right? And what I am daily dosed. And there are slowly but surely, I feel like I'm actually gaining more people in my world than less. And that is so interesting because I've lived in so much fear that I was going to lose and I'm starting to gain. But that has been a complete mindset shift within me that has helped, setting out the intention, setting it out in the universe, that energy within me in order to feel that way. I even feel unsafe, calling a Lyft or an Uber driver to pick me up if I'm alone because I have a wheelchair and I can't run. I can't flee. I can't hop out. I can't do those things. And so I feel stuck. So let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about safety. Let's talk about pain. And let's talk about how to feel protected and how to help desensitize our nervous systems from past traumas and manage our current ones. And let's be real. Life isn't a box of fucking chocolates, all right? Like Forrest Gump, you fucking asshole. God damn you, it's not. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Forrest Gump. Andrea Moore. And sorry, that was totally not scripted. That was me just being an ass. My guest today, Dr. Andrea Moore. What's up, girl?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. And oh my gosh, everything you spoke to, I have the chills all over. So I'm so excited to dive into
the fear chills, the safety chills.
Exactly.
I know. So I'd like to start with talking about your experience with pain, because I know that's kind of where it all started with you. And then how you kind of, became the badass that you are, but we'll get there.
Yeah. I'm still getting there, but thank you. Let's see. I always just like to be I feel like my story is so convoluted and has so many just twists and turns and stops and starts. And at the end of the day, it's my journey with chronic pain almost started by accident because I lived in pain for so long that I didn't know it was abnormal. And to the point where when I was a teenager, I remember going to physical therapy once. I remember asking doctors. I remember when I was a kid, talking to my parents. My sister remembers me complaining about my joints hurting all the time. And they're just it's fine, you're fine. Everyone's you're fine. Because it wasn't debilitating. It was just very aggravating. And it wasn't until I became a physical therapist, which was it's a whole other story of why. That's not why I became a physical therapist. That I would ask, you're trained to ask people, you're coming in for their knee pain. And you're always trained to be okay, what else hurts? Is there anything else that's bothering you? And people would just look me dead in the eye and be nope. And I'm come on, Like you're trying to tell me your back doesn't hurt a little or your hips or your neck. And they're like, no, like people would look at me like I was crazy because I was like, would like push their buttons. I was like, I don't believe you.
There's got to be something wrong with you.
Yeah. And so it was literally by that to be like, oh, what I'm feeling. Because I just thought I was a baby about it. I thought everyone else felt like that. And I was the only one that was such a baby that couldn't tolerate it. And that I was the only one complaining about it. And it was just like, that's normal. That's just what it is to live in a human body. So from there, I have had multiple separate instances of chronic pain. Obviously, just this long lasting joint pain. Like it used to present in all kinds of different ways of like shooting pains. Like I'd just be sitting there and it's just like a lightning bolt would hit me in random places. Other times it was just like anytime I'd go to move a joint or my knee or it was always moving around, always different. I've also dealt with like sciatic pain. I have dealt with when I was pregnant, incredibly bad pubic symphysis pain that lasted for a couple of years. And I have dealt with one of the most traumatic ones that I'm not even mentioning them all was after
we're doing the short list.
I'm doing the short list right now. It's so funny because it's great though, because it's like people would come in, they're like, here's my pain. I'm like, yeah, I got you. I know exactly what you mean. Because I felt it. I felt it all. And also I would take on, when I was working as a physical therapist, before I learned energetic boundaries, I would just take on people's pain.
Of course. Yep. I have struggled with that doing this show because I am an empath like nobody's business. But these stories of people that they share with us for our listeners and everybody here, it is nuts because I was taking on like their traumas, their sadness, all of this stuff. And I had to figure out a way to clear. Like I would finish up an episode and I'll do it with you when I'm done because you're just totally triggering me. Kidding. No, but when we're done, we're still talking about heavy stuff. We're still talking about safety. We're still talking about fear. We're talking about pain. Then that conversation of your and I's today will continue to stay with me. I just have to find a way to say, hey, that can still be part of my life, but it doesn't need to be part of the fabric of my being. Because I take it in. I take it in so much. And I feel for you. I feel for everybody I talk to. It's a blessing and a curse, man.
Totally. Yes to all of that. But yeah, what really just was the kind of pivotal point in my life is when I got into a car accident. And so I was left with post-concussive syndrome and I was out of work for 6 months. And this was just so unlike the other pains I had experienced because all in retrospect now, of course, because everything's in retrospect that we can say a lot of times, is that I think the way my parents handled my pain actually gave me kind of a superpower in that I never really had a fear about it. It just was. And it was just part of me. So like, it's like, I remember, especially in physical therapy school, which is a whole irony because I'm sitting here learning about all this stuff and not in pain myself, where it's like, I remember I would be almost falling walking upstairs because like my knees would just give out on me or like would hurt so bad. But I never made it mean anything. It was just there, which I know sounds really weird. But when I had my car accident, that was different. Those symptoms were so different because it affected my intelligence. It affected the thing that I basically valued the most. And it was such an invisible, obviously my other pain was invisible too, but I felt like I could live my life with it. Whereas the concussion was different. It's like it stopped me from doing the things that I love and no one was taking me seriously. I'm sure everybody listening can relate. It was just like, I remember going to these appointments week after week. So like I was in the DC area to like the top concussion specialist and they'd like do a test on me. They'd be like, oh, looks like you're still affected. Come back next week. And I'm like, no shit. Did I just drive all the way out here for you to tell me that? Wow, shocker. Thanks for the news.
Oh, don't we just love our doctors, God.
I would ask them like any treatments, anything I could do. And they like would look at me like I was crazy. They're like, no, just come back next week for more testing. I'm like, why are you keep testing? Like, I can tell you I am still affected.
Yeah. And I totally identify with the post-concussive thing because I have had 6 concussions. My 6th one was a couple months back. I took a really nasty spill because I didn't have my wheelchair on the side of the bed and everybody that's listened has heard that story. But nonetheless, I ended up with 2 black eyes and a broken kind of sort of nose. And it just looked horrible. And the post-concussion thing is super scary because at least from my experience, I lose my memory. I don't know where I am. My vision is jacked. I cannot read up close right now at all. And it's getting worse by the day. It feels like I've got bees in my brain. I know that sounds like the strangest thing possible, but I have this buzzing sound that is constantly here in my noodle and my focus and brain fog and so on and so on and so forth. It absolutely disrupts your ability to be who you are.
Yes, 100%. And that is where then for me, the fear really came in. And before that had happened, I had been on this huge journey already of kind of an internal self-development. I kind of got on that whole bandwagon because I talk about that one. I also have ADHD. I was diagnosed in the 3rd grade. And so that was something that I was I have to fix this ADHD. It is something that is wrong with, I identified through my college years of this is bad, this is wrong, which we can talk about how problematic that viewpoint was. And so I had finally gotten to the point, through different nutrition things I was doing, different healing things that I was doing, where I kind of actually started to feel like my brain was operating where I wanted it to. And then it was literally got in my car accident. And it just felt like I backslid and then made everything not even back, just went down the freaking tank. And so it not only brought up just the fear, the physical loss of what I was able to do, but the emotional trauma and impact and the implications of it were for me, absolutely massive. So I just kind of got obsessive on this journey of how there's got to be a better way. I refuse to accept this, just keep coming back from testing. This is the way you're stuck.
Give me a break.
And yeah, so
pissed.
So I had already kind of been on this more holistic journey through nutrition and things like that. But it's that just did not, there's helpful pieces to it. But, I was approaching it all wrong. I was approaching it through this very perfectionistic lens. My, self-criticism, everything was about, I am damaged, I am wrong, I am broken, I must be fixed, right, to be worth anything. And then I got really into the mindfulness meditation world because I had already been very aware of that and learning about it for chronic pain because there's so much research on it. And I was working with chronic pain this whole time, by the way.
Right.
In the clinic.
Yeah, you're a doctor of physical therapy working on chronic pain and struggling in your own. Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's important for people to even when we're feeling bad about ourselves, you're literally in the world of helping people in chronic pain and you were unable to pull yourself out of it for a while.
There was such a disconnect. It's here I was getting this information. And so to make a long story, I'm going to kind of just dive into the chronic pain world. It's right. So the information I was getting as a physical therapist was really this amazing, evidence-based neuroscience backed on why does pain exist in the first place? Why does chronic pain happen? Which is, you touched on at the beginning, right? It is this increase of sensitization of our nervous system. And so, they talk about here's all the things you can do to decrease the sensitization. And a lot of them are mindfulness-based, meditation-based, these body techniques, working on mindset, all those things. But they never really dove into what happens if you try those things and your system's fuck you, no.
Yeah.
Which is what was happening for my system. And also I recognize it in a bunch of the clients I was working at. It just it was I know this is where it needs to go, but it feels like we're missing it. There's a gap that needs to be bridged here. So then through my own just more, I would say more emotional suffering that I was having, I found the much more somatic based world, a trauma informed somatic approach. And all of a sudden it was oh, this is the missing piece. This is the piece that shows me how to work with my nervous system, how to be with it through all the uncomfortable things that were coming up. And what I noticed though is in the somatic world, no one was seeing how it linked to chronic pain. So I was look, these two worlds, it's one ends and one begins. And I'm they fit beautifully together. So I just kind of...
It's not a round peg in a square hole, guys. Yeah.
It's I combine, because it's somatic work without when you have chronic pain, I mean, it can be helpful. Like I'm sure there's people who have healed just by doing that, but I have worked with many who have been somatic healers who have, but they're all about that world. But when they don't understand the pain neuroscience, they're missing a piece. And then same thing with like people who work with pain neuroscience, and they don't understand the somatic piece, they're missing a piece. And so I've been able to bridge this gap between these worlds that both exist. And I've had tremendous success with myself and also with the clients that I've been working with chronic pain.
Can you, for our listeners, just some people might not know what somatic is. Can you talk about that, please?
I would say somatic is literally just in reference to the body. Like, I'm pretty sure if you look up the exact definition, it's just like relating to the body. So,
right, which is my point. Like, can we get?
Yes,
yeah, that doesn't help me at all.
But I say this to make the point is that somatic work does not have a definition that is like universally accepted, which is a little frustrating. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I'm super frustrated now. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Because I have met many people who have done somatic work. I mean, you see the same thing with a lot of like I've met people who do physical therapy and they're like, yeah, I did all the electrical stimulation and ice packs. I'm like, oh my God, that's not physical therapy. But like in their head, they've done it, So it's just, so somatic work, it is really working on an embodied level, working with what your nervous system is holding, not what your thoughts in your brain and that you can access on a cognitive conscious level.
Yeah. Well, so I Googled it because I wanted to see if you were right. Somatic, guys, relating to the body.
Yes. Told you it's something incredibly vague.
Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Relating to the body, especially as distinct from the mind.
And I want to add something to complicate the shit out of it too.
Excellent. We love that here.
Is that it says relating to the body, right? But going and getting a massage that is on your body is not somatic work.
Right. Like it's nuts. So it's like, it's body work, but it's not body work.
And this is where I like really need to, I mean, it truly is something that I want to come up with a name of what I do, because I feel like when I call it somatic work, it doesn't give what I do justice.
No.
Because here's the thing is, somatic work is only relating to the body. But if we're only looking at the body, then we're neglecting the fact that we have a mind. And if we're only looking at the mind, we're neglecting the fact that we have a body. We need to look at how they work together. And then there's the third element of like what you have your physical body, but then you have your like soul body or whatever, your innate intelligence, your body wisdom, what your nervous system holds.
Yeah.
Those all need to work together. So often people tend to have like a bias in one area. So maybe they find themselves doing a lot of physical work. Like I've gone to physical therapists and chiropractors and massage. And, it's like I've done all this like very like physical stuff, maybe a lot of exercise or things like that. So they've done a lot of physical body work, but they might be lacking, looking at what are their thoughts. Those are really important. And then what is the nervous system actually holding?
Yes.
And then the thing that I see a lot is people have done a lot of thought work, lots of mindset work, which is so important, but they're not looking at how their nervous system is receiving that, how different parts might be reacting to that. And this part is crucial. So this is where I was tripping up, and a lot of my clients tend to trip up. Just maybe based on the way I talk, you attract people like yourself, right? So
yeah, no kidding, honey.
But it's like I've worked with people from all realms, but it's like this is probably the most common one that I see is they're really deep in the mindset work. And they're like, I'm trying to think positive. I'm trying to think better. I'm trying to accept who I am and like love myself. All really wonderful, beautiful things. But there are parts of their nervous system that are not on board with it, or that have a resistance to it, or have a fear of that. And it's held on this deep subconscious level. It doesn't matter how logically we want to believe those thoughts. If there are parts of our nervous system that don't believe them, we're going to have a disconnect. There's going to remain a tension in our body. And that is going to actually, sometimes even that tension itself, like the more people dive into mindset work, the more can actually amplify pain, because you're actually like engaging in that like tension in your body. You're like actually flaring it up in a way.
Wow, that's super interesting, because I like little miss discipline when it comes to like my morning routine. Like I it takes me about 2 hours to get out of bed, which is a total bummer. Like all of you that can like bounce out of bed and just feel great, praise yourself and love your body that you can. Okay. Let's start there. Then for me, I'm like, it takes me forever. So my alarm goes off and I lay there and then I get my phone and I'm like looking on Instagram for all the stupid reels that all my girlfriends and I share back and forth all night long. This is what we do to communicate with each other. And then I finally can like wiggle my toes and I can finally get out of bed. And then I do that. And then I get into my mindset routine and I get into my sauna and I've got a book that I read or I've got a music that I listen to or whatever it is that I do to kind of get my brain prepared for the fact that I've got to live in pain all fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I've got to have a conversation with myself that is like, you've got this, girl. Like I'm a cheerleader every fucking morning of my life for myself, but I'm not doing it in all of the right places. And I think that that's a challenge that I know that I'm being faced with because I'm like a cheerleader in so many wonderful spots and I'm a complete sucky asshole to myself in other places. And so I need that, like you had said, that disconnect between the body and my mindset and all of that. I'm talking like crazy about all of this pain in my brain in the morning. And I'm almost like setting myself up for more pain during the day, like because I'm thinking about it and because I'm trying to process it. It's so confusing for people like myself that are really trying hard to implement positive, happy, good things in our world. And some of them are actually to our detriment, which is so frustrating.
Yes. And this is exactly what I ran into too. So I just want to send so much love. Like so many of the people, I mean, pretty much all of the women I see are doing all the right things on paper, or they're doing exactly what they've been told are the right things to do. And they are trying harder and harder and harder and often don't need to try harder. It's actually about finding where can you actually let go some. Like, what if you didn't have to try so hard? And that part of you that, is the cheerleader she's obviously incredibly beneficial and amazing and powerful and sounds like a great freaking leader, right? But there's a difference but one, she doesn't need to be on board all the time. Like no cheerleader is that peppy all the time.
Put your fucking pom-poms down.
Yeah, right? Like no, like you can't, no cheerleader. I mean, there's those people who, I mean, you're obviously like, you are a very spunky person, but it's like, you got to have your moments too. But imagine if you're a cheerleader and there's a team that's tired. They're like, they're down, but they all together have the same goal in mind. They all really care about winning, this game that they're playing, right? They're basketball players. I don't know. Right. To cheer them on is great, right? Because you can get them riled up. They're all on board. They want to be motivated. But imagine now if you had a cheerleader who's trying to cheer people who are like, I don't fucking care about basketball. I'm terrified of playing. I don't want to be on this court. That one player probably wants to punch the damn cheerleader in the face. And so it's like, where are those parts of us that sometimes need to get to have their expression where they're like, I'm not actually on board with this. I don't want to be cheered on. I'm actually scared of being like showing up like this or having to get through this day or do this thing. And that's where we were. And then a lot of times there's younger parts of us that are holding on to trauma.
So what do we do with you? How do you help us? Because I almost just barfed a little bit because that just rang very, very true for me. It's almost a little sad to hear that.
Yeah. Yes. And it often is.
Did that just somehow I'm feeling about it? Because it is,
Yes.
It is sad. It's sad because a lot of the things that we're told and things that we're taught and things that we're supposed to do and all of these things that we're used to, you just kind of like turned it upside down on us a little bit here, which is okay. Because I think that that's what we need to be doing is I'm sick and tired. Well, everybody that knows me knows that I've never been a big like norm person. Like I don't follow rules. Rules. That's silly. Whatever. I break rules. I push boundaries. I've always been that way. So I don't know anything but that. So when it comes to actually not doing that and being really safe and being kind of shy too, like that is not innate to me and it's not innate to a lot of people. So what can we do to help ourselves? Because I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is that we keep trying all of these things and we're not getting results. And then we get frustrated and then we spend more money doing the same shit over and over again, especially in the chronic pain community, which you understand. We throw so much money at our bodies, whatever it is, whether it's a supplement or this doctor or that therapist or that healer or this or that. I mean, whatever it is, we fall for all of it. And we're being marketed to very, very heavily. Chronic pain, I think as a whole, as a topic, is literally where we're being targeted instead of helps. So what do you do? What do you do for people? All right, can you solve this? World problem solved by Dr. Andrea Moore. No pressure.
Yes. So chronic pain in itself is going to dissociate us from our body. It takes us out of our bodies because often our bodies are not a place where we want to be in. So often people with chronic pain can relate in that it's like, I don't even know, like you feel your pain, obviously. And I feel like this is the biggest, like, it's like feels so confusing at times. It's like, clearly you're very aware of your body and the parts that hurt. But when you try to like really feel into your body, often it feels like you're like a floating head. You're like living in your thoughts. And then it's like, you feel your pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, you're not fully embodied in your body. Often if you try to have awareness of like other parts of you that don't hurt or, you know, things like that, or even just awareness of the tip of your nose, your ears, or like your armpit, like somewhere that doesn't hurt, that feels more neutral. I don't know. But so often, right? So we're disconnected from our bodies, which means we're disconnected from the wisdom our body holds for us. And there can be layers to this type of work. And so the ultimate goal is to be able to be at a point where you can hear the wisdom that your true authentic self is sharing with you and that you can act on it in an aligned way. And so it's almost like so let's take the advertisements, right? Being targeted. Ideally, someone can take an advertisement that is being directed at them, run it through their authentic wisdom, be like, is this right for me? And then you can be like, no, it's not right for me. Or be like, actually, wow, this one is really speaking deeply to my gut. Like this feels different, right? And that is so important because ultimately the stronger connection we have with our body, the stronger we can access that wisdom and run everything through this gut check. And sometimes our bodies just might have direct messages for us, but sometimes, you know, it might be an external person helping guide us through something, but it's you've vetted them through your own wisdom. So that all sounds great, but the problem is for people with chronic pain, accessing that wisdom is really freaking hard a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of my work comes in, is looking at what are the barriers to accessing that wisdom. And often especially for people who have tried everything, one of the barriers is that accessing that wisdom is actually interpreted as a threat by the brain. The brain doesn't doesn't want to connect.
Weird.
Yes. But
that's like fear-based right there. Like the fact that my brain's not connecting correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit, great.
And so for some, I like one of my favorite examples is, you know, I know we've kind of touched on like an ancestral trauma. I think another time we were talking, right? It's like, historically, it has not been safe for women to have money, to run a business, to be independent, to speak their mind. So pretty much all of us are to some degree are carrying some ancestral trauma and information that is passed down. It has been shown to be passed down through the DNA that says showing up as your authentic self is not okay. That is unsafe because if you do that, you could be killed. So
I'm losing my mind over here.
To access your own wisdom, then your brain's like, don't do it. You're gonna, especially if you're someone who's a disruptor of status quo, who's a rule breaker, who's like, I don't stand for societal norms. Your brain is like, dude, not okay. You're going to die if you do those things. And your brain just wants you alive. That is literally the only thing it cares about. It does not give a shit about you thriving or you feeling happy or you pursuing your passions.
It's so interesting because I know that we talked about the ancestral part of things and patriarchy and all of that stuff. And for women, I'm kind of befuddled as to how it is possible that we are not the supreme being on the planet.
It's by design.
Ugh, for us to be unable to vote.
Yeah, like cis, and like I want to say I am married to a man. Like I love men. There are so many good men in this world, right?
Oh
Like
my
it's not, this
God,
is not
I
shitting on
love
men. I
a
always
penis.
right. Thank you.
Good
Yes, like
God, give me that
100%.
dick, baby. Give it to me.
Exactly. We are not advocating for a dick-free world.
No, I am boy crazy. I love men. I think you were wonderful.
Yes.
You were absolutely incredible. However, we are all smarter than you combined.
Yeah, so we were talking about like the patriarchal structure
Right.
that men also suffer from.
Sure. Well,
Men,
thank you for saying that. I think that's fun.
I think I have met so many men, and I tend to speak to women, but it's like I have met a bunch of men too along my journey that they suffer from this just as much. So it is the very, very few, that benefit, very, very few. So it is by design that we are disconnected from our bodies. Like that could be a whole episode of like, let's look at everything that sets us up. And this has been going on for so many generations that like, it's so hard to even see it, right? From like with our parents and most of them so unintentionally, like none of this is on purpose. It's just what was trained to them. It's like every time it's like, no, finish your plate. They're starving kids in Africa, or like, all right, are you sure you want to eat that? Or if you got hurt, it's like, you're okay, get up. Or you know what I mean? It's like all these things.
Yeah, my dad, like I'd be on the slopes because I was this massive skier, and I would fall. My dad's like, get up, like yell, scream, get up, get up, get up, get up. And it's a really interesting thing because, and I know a lot of this, at least from my perspective, is a lot of us kids that have been raised in the 80s, everything was always brushed under the rug, and that included trauma.
Yes.
So it didn't matter what was happening. You couldn't talk about it. Absolutely not. Why would we do that? Because that's terrible. And we were doubted too, especially as girls, little girls, of what happened to us or something that was happening within a family or something that happened in a park or whatever the hell it is. We were doubted. So we stopped sharing. So we stopped and we kept it all in. And I'm using a royal we, but I'm actually really talking about myself in that regard because I did all of that stuff. I was raised in a very, very religious home. So things that I wanted to talk about, I couldn't, not even a chance. I still can't to this day. And I'm going to be 45 in 20 seconds. And it's like, it's nuts because that stuff sat there and it never was worked through. And now I'm doing it. Now, right now, I'm now starting to work through it because I didn't know I needed to work through it.
Of course not. Like especially if you were telling somebody about what was happening and it was not listened to.
Yeah.
That is even more damaging, right? Because then it's like, that's when you start to question yourself. Like that's when you now have, and these are the things that disconnect us from ourselves. It's evidence of it is not safe to share what's inside. Something that is inside or what happened to me is wrong. And so therefore it must be suppressed. But also it teaches our brains again, like, oh, this is bad. This is wrong. We should fear this because it wasn't met with compassion and love and listening and being heard. And so our brains, especially as kids, just have to figure it out. What is the thing that keeps me alive in this family? How do I keep functioning so my parents keep feeding me and loving me?
Marlboro Reds and whiskey. That's pretty much what happened to me when I was 15. That's the route I took because that was the only way that I could get the attention that I wanted by acting out. Even though I was like, dude, all I'm trying to do is like tell you that something shitty happened to me when I was 13. Like, that's it. Like, let's talk about it. But I could never do it. And when it comes to our physical body and taking care of it from your perspective and what you work with your clients, can you just, before we jam out, I want to make sure that we're leaving our listeners with what you want to make sure is like the most important thing that's ever come out of your mouth.
Oh, no pressure.
No pressure. No pressure at all. This is it, guys. This is it. This is it. The most important thing she's ever said. Are you ready?
Oh my gosh.
You love to hate me right now. I'm sorry,
Oh
babe.
my gosh. Yeah. No, I don't do well. Okay. So it is really what I like. The overarching is that your body has a message for you. Your pain is holding a message. And often the instinct is to want to clamp it down, get rid of it, fix it, make it go away. But often it is when we can look at it, when we can be with it, when we can sit with it and really hear it in the language. And this is a skill. This is not something that is intuitive because we haven't been allowed to explore this side of ourselves. And this is the skill that I really, really teach, is that when we can learn to listen in the language that our body has for us, not only do we get permission from ourselves and can build safety to be more our authentic selves and live a life that feels great, but it also is what allows us to work through traumas. To right now they're kind of stuck and stagnant in the system, and like actively it takes a lot of tension to like hold it down. It takes a lot of guarding and a lot of like of our body's resources to like hold it down and keep them at bay.
Yeah.
And so when we can finally let them out, look at them, see them and feel them, which is not easy. It is hard work. It is not like quick fix type of work. It is not like everything's going to feel like miracles and rainbows type of work. It is like you are willing to feel the uncomfortable emotions, to develop a safety to even sit with those and to be with what your body has for you. That is what allows it to release out, or to be held in a way in your body that is now safe, because it's not about getting rid of your past or like erasing a story. It's just about holding it in a way that feels like a true part of you and not a part that's having to be suppressed and held down.
I love that so very much because, and I've said it on the show before, but there was a gal that I talked to, I don't even know when, it's months and months and months ago, but I was talking about the fact that, my CRPS has firmly planted itself in my leg. And she goes, that's because you're unable to move forward. And I was like, well, fuck you. It's legit. Like there are things, and unfortunately, I've got some places in my bod that's holding on to stuff. And I can literally tell, like, especially with a hyper nervous system like I have, right? With CRPS, something happens in my world, a conversation on the phone, an email that I get, like something so benign. And I can feel a specific spot in my legs completely fire up with that person. And it's there. And I'm like, well, this is gross. The fact that I've got this, like, all of this, like, energy trapped in my legs is what I feel. And it's one of the reasons why I started this show, was because I knew I was going to find people like you who understand that, because I'm sick and tired of going to doctors that all they want to do is just put me on gabapentin. I'm like, if you even say the word gabapentin in this room, you're dead. It was nice knowing you. Like, knock it off. Because we're in this stuck state. Nobody talks about trauma-informed approach to care. And I use that phrase all of the time on the show, because it is. If we're not talking about the stuff, then we're not going to be able to be out of pain, period. I don't care if it's mental pain or physical pain,
Yeah.
I am so happy that you spent time with me today. How can we find you?
Best place to find me is on Instagram. I am at Dr. Andrea Moore, DrAndreaMoore.
More.
Yeah.
See, that's a cheerleader. See, here I am. I'm showing up for you. More.
Website's the same, drandreamore.com. And I have my podcast as also, if you enjoy listening to podcasts, the Unweaving Chronic Pain podcast.
Yes. And she is a hoot, as you have experienced with me today. Thank you so much for your time with me today. And our listeners, we all need you like nobody's business. And you work virtually with people, yes?
I work all virtually with people in both group and one-on-one. So
I love that.
Yes.
Well, now that, the one thing that we did get good out of COVID was that we were able to figure out a way to keep making it happen. And it is making it really accessible for chronic pain patients to get healing. Right?
Yes, 100%.
It's something that we have struggled with for a very long time. And now it's like, no excuses, guys. You are exclusively invited to share this authentic wisdom, superpower, VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know someone that is living in chronic pain? If you do, send them our way here to the Pain Game podcast. I'd love to connect with them and hear their heartfelt stories of strength and wisdom and freaking awesomeness, right? And reviews. Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting to do this at the end of my episodes. Get on your phone real quick, go do a review of the show. Spotify's like, boop, you just tap a star. And on Apple, you don't need to do, it's going to take you like a minute. I'd love to have my community of listeners help drive traffic to the show so we can continue to help others on our journeys through trauma and pain together. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials while you're at it. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.